ancient capital of Japan, a sprawling metropolis, a city steeped in tradition, heritage, and culture. A place where it is easy to forget time and step back into a bygone age.
Can't keep that up. It is perhaps appropriate that this is where Kuoe are based though. The company is young, very young, founded only 4 years ago in 2020. Their pieces are all inspired by vintage Japanese designs. A lot of horological advertising focuses on time, in particular on heritage, and that makes sense given the content they're trying to advertise. But while there is none of that heritage here, it's hard to look at a watch from Kuoe and not feel drawn into the past. I've spoken on my channel at length about my desire to buy not only a gold tone watch, but a square model for my collection. I've also hammered on constantly about my love of watches with a smaller diameter, and on a couple of occasions I've even recommended this exact watch in my lists. Well, I've put my money where my mouth is. It's time for another keep or sell video. Does the Royal Smith 90008 earn its way into my collection, or does it need to find a new home on eBay? Now, I will just start by saying that I have quite clearly lost my mind when it came to this edit, but I wanted you to understand why. I really was focusing on expanding my editing repertoire, and while certainly a long way from perfect, I do think what I've put together here is at the very least unique when it comes to the watch review space, even if it has clearly had some very obvious inspiration. Whether it was worth the extra effort or not, I highly doubt it, but I do hope you enjoy regardless. With all that said, let's get into the video. Before we get into the watch itself, I just wanted to take a moment to discuss the purchasing process. Like many micro brands, Kuoe has a website that offers both international pricing and shipping. Unlike most micro brands, they also have a physical store, located in Kyoto in the basement of an unassuming shopping area. I took a walk there after visiting the nearby famous Niho Castle, and I have to say I was not expecting what was awaiting me. The store was absolutely rammed. Kuoe is not exactly the hidden gem I had thought it to be, and every patron was Western. They, like me, had probably come to the conclusion that it would likely be cheaper to buy a watch in person and avoid import tax than it would be to buy one online. I'll talk costs a little later on though. Inside the store, all of their models and straps are laid out. You choose what you want, speak to an advisor who will get everything put together for you, take a seat and wait to check out. It's actually really refreshing to be able to get hands-on with the watches in this way, try out different strap combinations and so on, without being constantly pestered or feeling like a nuisance asking for things to be taken out of cabinets. I really enjoyed the experience despite the crowd, and I think the store itself is a real asset that immediately elevates Kuoe beyond a lot of online-only brands, at least in my opinion. When it comes to costs, the model I purchased is listed on the website at £675, which is roughly $850. The shipping is free for orders at this price point, but to my knowledge does not include import tax. Now, I don't pretend to know the full ins and outs of the tariff agreement between the UK and Japan, and you may well be looking to order from elsewhere anyway. But needless to say, the extra cost involved is potentially significant. However, this isn't even close to how much I actually paid. At the time I visited Japan, the exchange rate was the best. From my perspective, it's been in over a decade. Not only that, but the average cost of the watches in Japan in the store is also significantly reduced. That meant that I paid just over £400, roughly $510 for my Royal Smith, and I had the choice between two mid-level leather straps or a premium Italian one for that cost. You also get a travel case, watch tray, custom gift bag and an international warranty on the movement, though I would assume you still get all of this ordering online. Now that might sound like an amazing saving, and it is, but it isn't as if travelling to Japan is cheap. and you're not going to be flying into Kyoto either, so unless you happen to be visiting the city anyway, really these are opportunistic savings if you happen to be there. Now, I recognise that making points like this might seem a little ironic from someone who has made an entire video about not buying watches on holiday. But the conclusion to that video was actually that it's only really problematic if you're buying purely on impulse and not checking prices and sizes and so on. That was certainly not the case here. I knew exactly what I wanted and how much it would have cost at home. Regardless of the price point being discussed, I think it's high time we actually spoke about the watch itself. One thing that really speaks to me about this piece, which is a very personal point of appeal, is that it looks just like my grandfather's watch. Now, my grandfather himself actually means nothing to me, unfortunately, as he was dead years before I was even born, but this watch means a lot as my father wore it throughout my childhood. This isn't exactly a commonplace style anymore, and while Vertex themselves do exist again, they aren't exactly making anything remotely reminiscent of this. It is not a coincidence that when I first showed this Royal Smith to my parents, they both said in unison, "Oh, that looks just like your granddad's watch." That to me already is enough of a selling point, but clearly it isn't something that's going to mean much to anyone else. If we're talking broader appeal, you've got the choice of a range of different colour options, beautiful Breguet numerals, tasteful sizing, and a very subtle texturing to the dial. Regardless of the size of the brand, the build quality on offer is also absolutely bulletproof. And while you can buy models with a Swiss movement and Swiss made on the dial around this price point, if you threw any of them in the ring against the Royal Smith, they would struggle to compete as an overall package. You might look at the Mubert movement as a point of weakness, but even there, the 9039 has a few advantages over its Swiss competitors, given that it comes in slightly thinner. Not to mention the custom rotor, which I have to say really elevates the whole package and makes the exhibition caseback a real plus point. While I have been in the market for one, normally I wouldn't consider myself to be a huge fan of gold tone watches, but I think with vintage styling like this, their rich glow just adds a hint of nostalgia to the piece that's perfect given its 40s design aesthetic. I don't think there's anything wrong with the silver tone variants of the model, but I would say that I think they feel a little more utilitarian. That could be a good or bad thing depending on your viewpoint, and for almost any other watch, this probably would have actually been my go-to choice. While it is true that the heavily stylized nature of this video is because I wanted to practice some new editing techniques, I don't want to understate the fact that I also really wanted to showcase just how much I love this watch. Even if the end product is not exactly what I hoped for, as there are a few rough edges and I simply don't have time to fix them, I hope the sheer amount of time and effort put into making this translates on screen, as I feel this watch really deserves this kind of care and attention. It's absolutely beautiful. Though I will say, if I never have to try and adjust another mast tracking section, I will sleep peacefully. I can only apologise if some of the work on the shots obscures the watch in any way in terms of its coloration, brightness or contrast. I've always said that the aim of my channel is to make the best videos I possibly can, so think of this as a stepping stone towards that rather than the final destination. One thing that I do hope is abundantly clear is the conclusion of this video. I will absolutely be keeping this watch, indefinitely. Now of course, there will be a certain amount of recency bias with any new purchase, but I've not worn anything else since I bought this, and it wasn't even the only watch that I bought in Japan. It really has my attention, and it's no small feat to get my Black Bay off my wrist for daily wear, so that's high praise indeed from me. I just think it looks so stylish with workwear. Perhaps the biggest compliment I can give it is that I put it on and immediately feel like more of a gentleman. Not only that, but the experience of buying in person was so intrinsically tangible and enjoyable compared to the sterile nature of shopping online. It's made me rethink my purchasing habits. I appreciate the videos of this video are going to be an acquired taste, and I do worry that some of the shots don't show off the watch to its full potential after being so heavily edited. So I'm already thinking about a follow-up, 3 or 6 months on wrist, that kind of video to really try and do this piece justice. I absolutely love it. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing for more content like this.